There were a lot of references and Easter eggs in this episode, so let's get straight into it. We open with a scene of a spider-like droid walking through the desert. This is the same scene that we saw in the trailer for the show. The droid here is actually a monk of the Bomarr Order. The Bomarr Order was a religious order that believed in isolating themselves from all physical sensations to enhance the power of their minds. And to do so, they would transplant their brains into nutrient-filled jars and would use these spider droids as a way to move about. They were first seen in The Return of the Jedi and were the original residents of Jabba's palace. We then get to see a holographic map of Mos Espa as Boba and the torture droid converse about the different factions on Tatooine. The droid then references a sail barge disaster, which is a direct reference to when Luke and his friends killed the Hutt and destroyed his sail barge. The droid then goes on to explain which faction controls which sections of the city. The Trandoshans control the city center, which we were of course introduced to in the first episode, and the Aqualish controls the Workers' District, also introduced in the first episode. And finally, the Klatooinians who control the starport and the Upper Sprawl. And interestingly enough, we might have gotten a hint that the Klatooinians are already in an alliance with the Pikes. As they control the spaceport, they would be the ones to permit the Pikes landing. And they were not shown to have paid tribute to Boba in Chapter 1, unlike the Aqualish and the Trandoshan. We are then introduced to a new character by the name of Lothar Peel, who calls himself a watermonger and claims that he brokers sales on behalf of the vapor farmers. And vapor farmers are the farmers that farm on moisture farms, the very same type of farms that the Lars family own in A New Hope. Lothar Peel then goes on to say that Tatooine was once covered in water before being cut off, and indeed, Tatooine was indeed once covered in water, and in canon it is unknown as to how it transformed from water to sand. But in Star Wars Legends, Tatooine was a lush world with large oceans inhabited by the Kumunga people, that was later conquered by the Infinite Empire. The local inhabitants mounted a rebellion and managed to drive the Rakatans off-world, but the Rakatans decided to respond with an orbital bombardment that glassed the entire planet. As a result, the entire ecology of the planet was transformed into the desert planet that we know today. The remaining survivors then split off into two races known as the Tuscans and the Jawas today. Lothar Peel then goes on to say that his water inventory has been stolen by a street gang whose members are half man and half machine, and cybernetic implants in the Star Wars galaxy is a pretty common occurrence and can be as simple as the replacement of a lost limb or an enhancement. In fact, Chrysanthemum himself has also been subject to such enhancements, as we will see later. We are then introduced to Sophie Thatcher's character and her gang of disaffected youth, each with their own modifications. It was previously speculated that this was Arden Lyn due to her robotic arm, but nothing in this episode really gave away Dark Jedi vibes. But then again, we don't really get a proper introduction to her character, and we don't even know her name, so it remains to be seen in the upcoming episodes if they will flesh her character out. As Boba negotiates with the gang, Lothar Peel arrives at the scene angry that Boba is making a deal with them. And it's here that it's revealed that all the talk about respecting Boba was pretty insincere and instead an attempt to manipulate Boba into doing his dirty work. But Boba is having none of it and instead turns the tables on the watermonger. And in the background, we can even see two Jawas clutching each other, clearly quite afraid of Boba, signaling that the people of Mos Espa are starting to understand just what sort of crime boss Boba is. We then get a scene where a junk rat pops out, only to be swept up by a flying creature, who are then both eaten by a wart, somewhat reminiscent of Qui-Gon Jinn's "There is always a bigger fish" line.
There's always a bigger fish.
Warts were also first seen in Return of the Jedi and are native to the planet Tatooine. The Junkrat are also common creatures found on the desert planet. Boba heads back into his Bacta tank where he dreams about his father flying off on the Slave One, and we later get a scene of Boba heading into Mos Eisley to collect payment from the Pikes. As he heads into town, we see some Stormtrooper helmets being mounted on some spears. And this is the same scene that we saw in The Mandalorian, and we even get to see the mechanic Peli Motto and the droids who helps take care of Grogu and repairs Mando's ship. As Boba converses with the Pikes, the Pike leader states that his superiors in Obadiah are not willing to pay two different groups for protection. Obadiah refers to the homeworld of the Pikes located in the Outer Rim. The spice that is mined on Kessel is often distributed from the Pike Palace on the planet. And the decision to pay for protection instead of relying on their own muscle could stem from the fact that the Pikes are in a bit of a tough spot following the collapse of the Empire. Following the Empire's collapse, the planet Obadiah became too volatile for the spice trade to continue safely, and much of the Pikes' business was actually taken over by the Spice Runners of Kijimi, a group Poe Dameron would be a part of.
You were a spice runner? You were a stormtrooper?
Were you a spice runner?
Were you a scavenger? We could do this all night.
The Pikes then explained that they have already decided to pay off the Kintan Striders, revealing the name of the Nikto Speeder Gang. The name Kintan Strider is actually a reference to a monster species from the planet Kintan, who is often used as one of the holographic pieces of the game Dejarik. But while the Pikes state that they can't do business with both factions, it's more likely that they intend to pit the two against each other. Boba then returns to the Tuscan camp to find that everyone has been massacred by the Kintan Striders. As it turns out, the camp was attacked while Boba was away, which I find to be hardly a coincidence. As a result of the attack, we see that the chief is dead, and as Boba burns the bodies, he pulls out a smaller stick, the very same stick that the child Tuscan used, confirming the death of the child as well. But surprisingly, there is no sign of the female Tuscan, so it's not certain as to whether she is dead or not. The dream is suddenly interrupted by Chrysanthemum, and it's possible that he was able to make it past the guards because he is familiar with the surroundings and layout of the palace, as he did used to work for Jabba the Hutt. Boba is then saved by his new recruits, and as Chrysanthemum attempts to escape, he tackles the two Gamorrean guards down the stairs, but he doesn't make it far as he is then surrounded by Boba's men. He then falls down the Rancor trap, which is surprising given how he used to work there and should have been aware of it. But the fight scene just goes to show how tough Wookiees are. The fight scene also tells us that Boba is recovering. Despite receiving a few hard knocks from a Wookiee, he does not look as tired as he was in Chapter 1. The twins show up the next day offering an apology and tribute, providing a Rancor as a gift. It is then revealed that the Hutts are leaving as another syndicate has laid claim to Tatooine. The Hutts are not interested in fighting against another syndicate, might be because of their weakened state due to the death of Jabba the Hutt, who was their most powerful member of their clan. Boba then decides to release his old colleague, stating no hard feelings, it's just business, which is a slightly different rendition and reference to a Godfather quote.
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
We also get introduced to the Rancor handler played by Danny Trejo, who explains that Rancors are complex creatures, and that is indeed the case as we see the handler of Jabba's Rancor cry after Luke killed him and Mochi in the Bad Batch. We then see Boba start to form a bond with the Rancor, and the Keeper then goes on to say that the Witchers of Dathomir used to ride the Rancors. The Witches of Dathomir refer to, of course, the people of Asajj Ventress who practice strange dark side force magic. The Witches did in fact ride Rancors, as it was first revealed in the book The Courtship of Princess Leia, as the trio were stranded on the planet Dathomir. But riding a Rancor isn't only practiced on Dathomir, as the Hutts during the era of the High Republic did so as well. Boba then says he wants to ride it, stating that he has ridden beasts 10 times its size, a callback to the Star Wars Holiday Special when Boba rode the legendary Mythosaur, a mythic creature in Mandalorian culture rode by the old leaders of Mandalore. Boba and Fennec attempt to visit the mayor, but it is revealed that he is nowhere to be found. They then see the Major Domo taking off and a chase ensues. We then see a Silver Protocol droid, the same kind as C-3PO, and we even see mouse droids as well. These were first seen in A New Hope aboard the Death Star. As the Major Domo manages to steer one of the riders off course, the rider crashes into a painting depicting Jabba the Hutt alongside Bib Fortuna and Boba Fett. We even get to see Jabba's pet, a Kowakian monkey lizard by the name of Salacious B. Crumb. We also get to see Max Rebo and a Silver Protocol droid. We then see a droid carrying 2 Biffs, potentially the 2 of them being the members of the modal nodes who are incredibly popular on Tatooine and was featured in the Mos Eisley Cantina. So who knows, perhaps they are reaping the rewards of their popularity. Sophie Thatcher'S character finally manages to veer the Major Domo off course, causing him to crash into a series of fruit stands and finally into Maylurans. First introduced in the Rebels show, Maylurans are a special type of fruit and known to be the favorite of Hera Syndulla. Boba flies in with his jetpack and the Major Domo reveals that the mayor is working for the Pikes. We then see the Pikes land in Mos Espa, signaling that a war is coming. So that's all for the breakdown of Chapter 3. It was a rather short episode, but it had a ton of different references. Anyways, be sure to leave a comment down below, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.